Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while since I've recorded a chess openings video, so welcome back to Gotham Chess opening content. Today I am sharing with you one of the most incredible opening weapons that I've ever seen in my life. It's a way for you to play relatively normal moves with black up until a certain point when you absolutely uncork savagery onto your opponent, and there are a bajillion, which is a real number, traps that they can fall into. So what I've done for this video is I've posted the moves in the description. You can copy paste them into any stockfish that you'd like to run and check on your own. The video is split into a theory portion, and then I'm going to play one practice game against the 1700 rated subscriber. This opening I had never seen in my life, which goes to show you that it's probably quite rare. It's officially known as the Ponziani-Steinitz Gambit, but I'm going to call it the Dark Knight Gambit because you're about to find out. So basically, white plays the move e4, and you play e5. I mean, so far so good. Knight f3, knight c6, right? Defending the center against white's attack. Bishop c4 by white, and knight f6. This has to be the starting position. White has to go for a fried liver. This is the knight attack, looking for bishop or knight, well, really knight takes on f7 to fork your queen and rook. If you do not have this position, you obviously just have to play a regular opening, so developing your pieces, castling, etc. Here, there is one video I made a long time ago on the Traxler counterattack, which is fascinating, but the Dark Knight Gambit is unreal. In this position, what you will do is take the pawn in the middle of the board. Now, to the untrained eye, that just looks like a completely idiotic move. There are a lot of ways white can go wrong here. So we are going to look at three moves. We are going to look at, obviously, knight takes knight. Then we are going to look at knight takes pawn, which was the entire idea, and bishop takes pawn, which is the best move. I will, of course, reveal how white can get a completely winning position according to Stockfish. I don't know how practical it is for human abilities. So the first thing we will look at is actually, what if white completely ignores the knight and continues on the journey of playing knight takes f7? That is a fork of our queen and our rook. In this position, we play the move queen to h4, and from this point, black wins over 70% of the games, which is insane. It's move 5. So if you can guarantee yourself that massive of a winning chance, that's incredible, right? So the direct threat is queen takes f2 mate. But there is other stuff at play here. This bishop is very loose when the queen is on h4, which means the knight is also very loose. White here can play a couple of moves. So if white plays the move g3, that loses literally on the spot to knight takes g3. You just take it. Now there is pressure here and this way. White will probably take back with the f-pawn, otherwise you take the rook. And now you do not take the bishop. You throw in a check, attacking the king and the rook at the same time. If white were to block, then we can play takes, trade the queen, and a very important move to keep in mind in many of these positions is not the very natural move, rook to g8, although you can play that as well. It's actually the move d5, which attacks the bishop, and if the knight takes the rook, the knight will die in a couple of turns, and you're just going to be completely winning up a full piece. And a pawn? And a pawn, yes. So there's, let's say white plays king to f2, and is like, well, I'm not going to lose my rook. Well, now here comes bishop c5. And now white is getting laser beamed by the bishop and the queen, and it's borderline checkmate in several moves. So this takes me back to a couple of moves ago when the move g3 was played. White cannot play g3 to prevent this mate. White can prevent this mate by castling, but now we uncork the Trojan horse. The Dark Knight Gambit continues with knight takes f2. The point is that you're obviously attacking the queen. If the rook takes, here comes the bishop to c5 again. So your bishop, knight, and queen are kind of the three dynamite combo when the queen goes out to h4. Now the bishop is hanging, the rook is hanging. This doesn't really worry you because after check here, you again have the dynamite strike d5 when you can then bring out the bishop, and if they take it, it's a mate. So the bishop and the queen together are staring down at that corner. They just have to deflect this queen off that square. It's -10 on move 10. But queen h4 is actually not winning if white finds the best defense, which is to defend with the queen somehow. But still, it's incredibly difficult because now you attack the queen immediately, and people will lose this position just like 95% of the time because every move loses here except one. For example, queen f1, I mean, you just have knight c2. If queen to d3, preventing that, then you go back to taking this pawn, and then when the king moves, you can play d5 and bishop g4 again. I mean, it's very, very, very bad once queen h4 happens. I mean, knight takes f7 really cannot be played. I like, you are going to win just an obscene amount of games if your opponent comes in with the knight on f7. So just remember queen h4, keep in mind when the queen defends, you play knight d4, keep in mind when g3 happens, you take it. And if castles, you take on f2. So you have to remember just a couple of things if the knight takes on f7 and acts like everything is okay. What if the knight does not take on f7? What if your opponent sees this move and goes, wow, what an idiot, that's just a free knight? Black is now much better on move 5. So the Dark Knight Gambit has completely paid off because now you center pawn fork. And your opponent here should really try to lose the knight, not the bishop. So what that means is, if the move d3 happens, you want the bishop. You do not want the knight. The bishop is just better to have long term. And like, even in the most simplest of terms here, you're probably going to develop your bishop and queen and castle queenside. So if the opponent takes the knight, you fork the knight and the bishop, and then you try to speed up your development to castle queenside. White can play a lot of different moves here. White is not completely lost. Black is just better. But what more can you ask for in 5 moves of the game? For example, bishop takes is very likely. And then developing the knight, defending the knight, and attacking your queen is also very likely. What you should do here is rotate the queen this way, or what you could do is just play queen back, bishop out, and long castle. So for example, here, development, long castle, and now black is about -2, which is a completely winning position. Your game plan here is unbelievably simple. You will play f5, you will bring the bishop out this way, and you will just march down this direction and try to win the game. So something like bishop to e3, f5 is just incredibly strong. This doesn't scare you. The queen on g6 will line up to the king, and the queen just cannot be touched. I mean, she is untouchable by anybody in the white position on the g6 square. And you're going to see in the practice game, the queen does end up on the g6 square. So in general, when you don't get knight takes f7, you don't get this knight infiltrating, this is a very unique type of attack. When the queen comes out and goes here, this knight comes in, and so does the bishop. These 4 pieces just wreak havoc on the white position, and you have to memorize a little bit of variations. But when the knight takes back on e4, this leads to a little bit more tranquil of a position. So even something like bishop back to d3, you can take the knight, and this is included in the notes why you should play around with it. You're like, okay, well, I know that here I want to, develop my bishop, and then, develop my queen, and then long castle. This is the position that you are after when the game is a little bit more tranquil, and then you can play moves like g5, whatever. I mean, bishop this way, right? Like bishop d6, for example, just very, very simple example of how you can win immediately. You have this, and now e4. And white has to be extremely careful here. Although it's funny. In this particular way of trying to play this attack, white has this move g3 to cover the checkmate. So don't be like Gotham. Don't rush too quickly. Play f5, play g5. Be a little bit more responsible. But what I'm trying to kind of draw attention to is the fact that this is so potent. I mean, there's nothing that will stop you if you do this the right way. Your queen side is super solid. And yeah, I mean, knight takes back on e4, which you're going to face the second most popular amount of moves. Like, this position has been reached many, many tens of thousands of times. These 2 moves, knight f7 and knight e4, make up an insane amount of those games. But that draws me, of course, to the best move. We are here to find out how to refute this thing. The best way to refute knight takes knight is to not take it with anything in terms of the knight, and play bishop takes f7 check. This is 100% the best move. And in the Traxler, this is also the best move. Why is this the best move? You force the black king forward, but now what? So many people here will go, oh, dang, my knight is hanging and I can't, so I'm going to take this. That's actually what happens in the practice game. After this, black is completely fine. Black is still going to play the move d5. Your checks don't, this doesn't scare you. You can always hide your king. In this move order, it's actually better to go to e8 because you want to reserve the f file for your rook. In the practice game, I go to g8 because my king ends up safer there. But the game plan is honestly kind of straightforward. d5. And then you will support these pawns with the bishops. So the bishops will stand behind the pawns, make the center very solid. And, black just has almost no problems. Yes, your king is a little weak, but you can always trade queens. And black is just much, much, much better here. Again, long term, you can try to at least hide the king on the queen side if you want. Remember, you can't castle. You've moved your king. But you can try to play king d7, bring the rooks this way. So a lot of people are going to take on f7 and then play the wrong move. So they're going to take on f7, which is the right move, and then take the knight, which is the wrong move. You're going to get this a lot. Why are they going to do that? Because if they move the bishop, you're going to take the knight. And if they defend the knight with the queen, then you just go take, 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 and this is defended. But the best move, all right? You have waited long enough. What is the best move? After king to e7, the best move is moving the d-pawn. The best move actually is the move d4. The move d4 defends the knight with the bishop, so now you cannot take the knight because you would be losing your queen, right? Just can't do that. And it also threatens to walk into your position. So this is the best move according to Stockfish. What I recommend here is for you to attack the knight with the pawn. Now, white can still maybe go wrong in the next couple of moves. A lot of people here might just completely forget about what's happening and hang a knight. If they take your knight, you take the bishop, and again, the game plan is the move d5. The best move for white is not to check you, because then you block. It's not to check you, because you can run. The best move is to stop you from playing d5. And then here, you can, in my opinion, still survive. Because people are not going to know all of the Stockfish moves. They can memorize this far and get a little bit of a +2, but you can always go knight here. If you get booted around, you can go f5 or b5 or d6. And at some point, people will stop following the line of Stockfish, and they will have to play their own moves. And that is when you just safeguard your king. You do something called castling by hand. You play something like this. And you have to play chess. You will develop your bishops, you will develop your queen, and chess has to be played. So king e7 and d4 is the best. But there is a slight difference between pawn moves. If your opponent plays the move d3, attacking your knight, you go back. And the game plan here is, again, quite simple. You will play d5, guard your king, and play the rest of the game. So something like bishop back to b3, trying to go here, d5, castles, h6 to kick the knight out, develop all your pieces, make sure that you will get the king to safety, defend the center, and then castle by hand. So something that looks like this. I'm just going to play moves for black to show you what I'm talking about. Rook out, hide the king, and you have a totally reasonable position. So the best move for white against this gambit is to take on f7. Then the best move is to play d4. After that, it's completely in white's hands. Like, you can memorize those two moves, and then, but again, hopefully, and what you will experience, 90% of your games will not have, more than that, will not go bishop f7, d4. They might go bishop f7, d3, because it looks more logical to attack the knight, and people will think you're going to blunder, but you're Gotham subscriber, you're a GM, so knight back to f6, d5, and just so you understand, the other idea here is not even d5, it's just straight up h6, winning a piece. So you're going to attack the knight and take the bishop. You're, again, completely winning. There's traps all over. And if white even plays bishop f7 and d4, well, you've got to remember that you grab, you run, and then you safeguard your king a little bit later. Knight takes e4 for black on move 4 against the fried liver attempt is one of the craziest counter gambits gambits I've ever seen in my life. The statistics were absolutely staggering. The pitfalls for white are just extremely natural moves. And I think that even with absolutely best play, black gets a playable position. Of course, at a higher level in long games, if you're 2000, you can't play this. But if you're anywhere between 0 and 1800 and you're playing blitz, oh, I think this is just this is even rapid at the lower. I mean, this is just an incredible weapon. So enjoy the practice game. And the moves are in the description. So it's time for the first practice game. And I'm calling it practice game number 1 because I actually don't know if I'm going to be playing a second practice game. Basically, it depends on the length of this one. I generally don't know, and I don't want to make the video too long. So my opponent is a 1000 rapid player, 1700 rapid player, and about 1100 blitz, but generally prefers rapid. We're going to enter the variation of knight to f6, and this is all I told them to play. They have absolutely no idea what I'm going to do here. Hopefully they haven't somehow predicted this, but I'm going to now play the move knight takes e4. Now, hopefully I get a subscriber who just like relaxes and tries to find the move that looks the most practical and smart to them. But sometimes when people are playing against me in practice games, they know they're playing me and they sort of malfunction. They sort of play too fast. They get too nervous. They don't want to think too long. They think they're delaying my recording or something. So it's a little bit tricky sometimes when I play against viewers. Okay, so bishop takes f7. So my opponent actually finds the best move. Wow. Okay. I mean, hopefully they did not check the database, because another thing I'm always concerned about when I'm playing it, like now if my opponent, okay, so now they take on e4, right? So my opponent plays the more practical. Basically, if bishop f7 d4 happened after some thought, I would have been a little bit suspicious. It actually has happened in the past that sometimes when I tell subscribers what to play, they they use a little help, and because they don't want to, nobody wants to lose for a YouTube video, right? Nobody wants to get dunked on. But my opponent plays the more practical looking approach, which is to take a pawn and then take back. But the problem is, as we saw in the introduction, white is still in trouble here, because actually white has no advantage whatsoever. I have the 2 bishops. I actually think after knight g3, Stockfish will even recommend h5 to attack like this. Point is that if knight h5, then queen h4 just wins the game. I don't know if I want to do that. But I actually think it's completely fine. Let's try it. Let's go h5. This is very, very, very aggressive, obviously. The move queen f3 check is really not an issue for 2 reasons. Number 1, I can just hide my king actually on g8, and my king is totally safe. As I mentioned, the 2 pawns are very well supported by the bishop on e6. The thing is that if white plays the opening in this way, the way they've played it in this game, then you just really don't get a whole lot of counterplay. So now, yeah, I mean, even h4, very strong. Okay, there's queen f3. I'm actually thinking now I can even play queen f6, which is not something I could have done last move. Point is that if they take this with check, then I play bishop e6, and then I can take on g3. But I'm gonna play this the way I've described this already, hiding my king on g8. My king, like I said, is quite safe. This knight will have to go back to the e2 square, or h1, but h1 is probably the most depressing move I've ever seen. And what we're going to do now is, again, we're just going to kind of build up behind the center pawns and then bring the next wave of the attack. I don't know what the best move is here, but I want to urge you, as I've mentioned in the intro, not to get overexcited and just attack without actually setting up your forces in the right way. Okay, that's kind of ridiculous. What? Why would you play knight h1 here? You have to go back to e2. Oh my gosh. Okay, well now I'm actually very much considering this move, because at least if the knight had gone to e2, why did my opponent not go knight e2? I'm so perplexed. Knight d4 looks super nice. Of course, the queen will just go back, but I mean, I can't resist. This move just looks way too normal not to be played. Yeah, Yeah, I don't know. Well, now the queen has to go back to d1. And then probably I won't rush. I'll probably bring a bishop or a queen to the party. And then, you know, queen, bishop, bishop, rook, something like that. Just get all the pieces. My king is totally safe. My king is in a very, how to say it, unorthodox position compared to like normal openings. But yeah, I can't really tell the difference between which move. I think what you know, also going to g6 doesn't seem so stupid either to line up an attack here. So I might play queen d6 or queen e8. I don't know which one is best. Okay, let's go queen e8, queen g6. Line up an attack on that. I anticipate c3 to just try to kick me out, and then I'll have to move my knight. And yeah, well, we have, or knight c3. Okay, knight c3 attacks the pawn. Also not a bad move. I suppose bishop e6 or c6 are both possible. I'm gonna defend with the bishop because I want to develop my rook. So I wanna have another piece out, and then I'm gonna play queen g6. I just wanna have a little bit more development. Yeah, that move is also reasonable. I'm thinking to just develop my other bishop now. Sacrificing this pawn is a possibility to try to play like bishop g4. Oh, that looks really interesting, but I've been trying to urge you all to not get too excited, to put the bishops behind the pawns, and yeah, the knight on h1 is just not a good piece. That is not inspiring whatsoever. Let's move the knight out of the way, so we're setting up a fork, and we just don't want to trade too much because we kind of want to keep our pieces around for the attack. So queen g6, etc. I'm not rushing with the move h3 because when I play h3, my opponent will most likely play g3. And although that does restrict the knight's movement, I don't quite get my attack. I would like to get an attack. So these are kind of the next two steps of the position, and then we'll just have everybody staring at the white king side. So playing like this, yeah, queen g6, I guess. This is all part of the plan. Playing like this is what will happen if they play bishop takes f7. So again, if your opponents do find the best move, according to Stockfish, then you will get positions that look like this, where your king is maybe in a slightly odd situation compared to normal, but the pressure on the king side in the long run, I think will be very tough to defend. As we see here, even a 1700 rated player is sitting there going, what is going on? Now I'm going to go back, and I'm setting up this, and I'm not even sure how you defend it, because if you play king h2, I play e4. Well, that's not a bad move, actually. That is not a bad move. I mean, it's very, very clumsy, it feels like, for white. Another piece has joined the attack for me. Like, it feels like every move that I've made, I've improved my position more and more. And next, I even have another rook ready to join the party, or to g5. And white just does not have much movement here. Oh, gosh. That hangs everything. So that hangs knight to f3, but it also hangs knight to c2, and it also hangs rook f3, and I really hope my opponent just lets me mate them. I don't think that's going to happen, but rook f3 would be so nice. I'm going to play it because it's such a funny move. You can't take... and I mean, it's not great, but I really hope they just take for the sake of the video. But I don't know. Does my opponent want content or not? So yeah, that would be quite nice. The other thing that we're setting up is we're disconnecting the rook from the defense of that square. So bishop takes h3 is now possible, and yeah, it's just real nasty. Just a real nasty attack here. I couldn't take and play mate because fe3. So my opponent would not have allowed it. Here comes e4, opening up my bishop. This is just a very, very, very violent example of how to play this opening. Yeah. Oh, and now, oh, they resigned. Yeah, I mean, it was not good. Oh, gosh. Okay, let's go back and just very quickly review anything we could have done better. Obviously, we played normal. Yeah, h5 is actually the top Stockfish move. It's a little bit aggressive, but the thing is that white really doesn't get any danger on the black king whatsoever. If knight e2 would have been played, computer would like me to actually play h3 to try to open up my file, force this move, force g3, so now you can't come back, and just play normal. Yeah, computer just says here, here, very slowly. Like, for example, building up the position with something like queen d7, bishop somewhere, like maybe even bishop g4 is super strong, but let's say you don't play that and you just play like normal. Even a bunch of normal looking moves give black a completely winning position. So yeah, knight g3 is already completely lost for white. It's about -2 here and it's only move 8. So white has to just be very careful. And as I mentioned, knight h5 is impossible because this x-ray just dominates and you're just going to win material here. Queen f3, you have to be a bit careful. Now going here doesn't work because this is a check. So the only reason that going to g8 works is because queen to f3, this is defended. And in this game, I was able to go to g8 because this is defended. So we're taking that for granted. But if your opponent lets you do this, then here you have to go back this way so that this is not a check. Little details, okay? Little details that you can only really learn by playing the opening and getting out into the battlefield. So hopefully this is a good example of a practice game. My opponent did play the best move. They didn't fall into the trap, but that's why you have the theory portion of the video. Yeah, I'm going to wrap up here, and I will just say best of luck hunting people to death with this absolutely insane opening weapon. I think you're going to win a lot of games and catch a lot of people who are unprepared totally off guard, like absolutely off guard. And if they do play the best move like they play in this game, they will not necessarily play all of the best moves. And even if they do, you might still win. So happy hunting. Hope you enjoyed the video. Check out the moves in the description and let me know if, let me know if you win some games with it. I'll see you in the next one. Get out of here.